Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Good morning. The devotional today will be led by Representative Jonathan Cooper of Pownell.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe for the last time, I got to drive up to Montpelier from Pownell today, at least the last time for the next few months. And the loveliest part of that drive for me, the most meaningful part, is along the stomping grounds of the member from Bethel, Route 107. And that section takes me from Stockbridge into Bethel through a little hamlet, Gaysville. And you kind of blink and you miss it. Gaysville has a bridge over the White River. It has a church and a fine library and some houses and not much else. But it does have one feature that makes it important to me. It contains a small family plot, a burial ground on the riverside. And something I see every time I take that drive is a small headstone with a little lamb carved on top of it. And that little lamb makes me think of Gaysville on the day that that child died, about the family, perhaps the service that took place in that church, and how that family and that community responded to a tragedy. And I think of those things because I know how Pownell responded to my own, and the loss of my little lamb, June Violet Cooper, who would have turned 10 last Sunday. But the world intervened, and that won't be happening. So last Tuesday, something else crossed my mind, and it might be an occupational hazard of living in this state, but I thought about Calvin Coolidge, and I wasn't expecting it, but I thought about the brave little state speech that we all know. And I saw it in a new way that I hadn't before. See, in 1928, I thought he was just sort of giving us a little summary of life. That it was here that I first saw the light of day. It was here that I received my bride. It was here that my dead lie pillowed on the loving breast of our everlasting hills, or something like that. Tidy. But the hills were there for life's lurches that I hadn't put together until I went around the corner and saw that headstone for the 16th or 17th or 18th time. And I thought about Calvin Coolidge, the big brother, who buried his little sister Abigail when she was just 15 years old and they were both teenagers. And obviously I thought about his son, Calvin Jr., his namesake, who succumbed to a bout of sepsis from what had appeared to be an insignificant little blister that led to a massive catastrophe in 1924, some 4 years before he delivered his remarks in Bennington, a portion of which are etched into our walls. June had a Buddhist funeral because Tendai Buddhism was an important part of my family's life. So when the member from Burlington a few weeks ago in her devotional referenced a multi-bodied God, a creator that reflected back the physiques of the created, I thought of Avalokiteshvara, a Lord who looks down, a bodhisattva of compassion, who hears the cries of the world and of all suffering beings, because that is what it is to be a being, to have sentience. This is kind of an interesting moment for Avalokiteshvara and for us. Avalokiteshvara heard the cries from Pownell as much as she heard the cries from Plymouth Notch, from Castleton, from Heinsberg, from Essex, from Walden, from everywhere in our brave little state, from all across our imperiled republic, and throughout time and space on our pale blue dot. What we have is, Akhileshvara has 108 manifestations. It's a body that can shapeshift, like the devotional that we heard from the member from Burlington. And in fact, it's even in a female form in Chinese Buddhism and known as Guanyin. And we have a manifestation of 150. And it is through you that I have heard cries that I could not hear before. And it is through all of us that we provide compassion to the ones we serve for the next week, maybe just a week, and for the year to come. Thank you very much.
Will members and guests please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, Members, we received a request to read a House concurrent resolution that the House and Senate adopted pursuant to the consent calendar. HCR 152 is a House concurrent resolution honoring Silas R. Lumis for his more than a half century of extraordinary municipal public service as the esteemed Castleton First Constable. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas a lifelong Castleton resident, Cy Lumis, remembered his father's sage advice that you owe more to your town than just paying taxes. And when approached to run for Castleton's first constable, he agreed. And whereas when assuming this position in 1972, he probably never dreamed that his policing duties would extend until 2025, constituting one of the longest tenures ever for any elected Castleton law enforcement officer. And whereas unique among Vermont constables, Cy Lumis conducted his summer patrols on a police motorcycle, enabling him to work with the public on a more direct basis than if driving a police cruiser. And whereas in an act of true bravery, Cy Lumis once rescued a man from his car that had broken through the ice. On other occasions, he assisted in roadside deliveries of babies, and he was especially proud to provide law enforcement support at the Castleton Elementary School for several years following the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Connecticut. And whereas from 1990 to 1992, Cy Lumis served as Castleton Chief of Police, and over the years, he had also worked as a part-time law enforcement official with the Addison County Sheriff's Department and the Rutland County Sheriff's Office and the Brandon and Middlebury Police Departments. And his first public safety position was as a Castleton volunteer firefighter. And whereas Cy Lumis chaired the Vermont Constables Association, served as a member of the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council, and is a lifetime member of the National Constables and Marshals Association. And whereas militarily, Cy Lumis served as a U.S. Navy CB during the Vietnam War and later with the Army National Guard, including postings to Kuwait and Iraq, serving our country for a total of 40 years in uniform. And whereas on March 4th, 2025, after 53 years of patrolling the Castleton beat and earning a wonderful reputation for dedication and loyalty to his hometown, Cy Lumis concluded his law enforcement career. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly honors Silas R. Lumis for his more than half century of extraordinary municipal public service as the esteemed Castleton First Constable. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to Cy Lumis and to the Castleton Town Clerk.
Are there any announcements, member from Castleton?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The body just heard the resolution honoring Castleton's recently retired First Constable, Cy Lumis. Anyone that has traveled to or through Castleton likely has crossed paths with Cy. He has been a fixture in our town for over 50 years. I can tell all of you that the residents of our town are going to miss the familiar rumble of Cy's motorcycle down Main Street or on the shores of Lake Bomoseen. It is hard to put into the words the immense gratitude that our town has for his years of service. Not because we cannot put pen to paper, but how does one adequately thank someone for half a century of public service? Parents in our community had a partner in Cy, and Castleton's children didn't have to look far for a real-life hero that they could look up to. Cy, your love for our town is evident, and let me say that the feeling is mutual. Thank you for your service to our town, to our state, and to our nation. Madam Speaker, Cy is seated in the gallery and is joined by our town manager, Mike Jones. Can you please join me in welcoming them to the People's House?
Will the guest of the member from Castleton please rise and be recognized? Member from Stowe.
Madam Speaker, Memorial Day is a solemn day of remembrance. For me, this past Memorial Day was a weekend of joy. With me today, Madam Speaker, are some very special guests. Traveling from Germany, my oldest son, Sergeant Lincoln Lipsky, his daughter, my oldest granddaughter, Liana, and my youngest grandson, Lance, are with us in the gallery, accompanied by my middle son, Carl Lipsky of Morristown, and Thomas Lipsky of Stowe, and one of my favorite former wives, Mary Margaret Leonard. We had a wonderful family reunion. I will leave it at that. They're here for a few days from Germany. Will be leaving today. So, Madam Speaker, I would appreciate if the body could give a warm welcome to my family. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Will the family of the member from Stowe please rise and be recognized? Member from Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had not planned on speaking today, but I come from a family where we celebrate the little things along with the big things. So I'm hoping the body will help me celebrate the engagement of one of our committee assistants, Anna Grace, who has been absolutely amazing for both commerce and general and housing. She's in the balcony, so if you could please help me congratulate her, because she won't do it herself.
Congratulations. Member from Berkshire.
Good morning. The Rural Caucus will be meeting tomorrow morning in room 10 at 8 a.m. to continue our discussion on education transformation. So all are welcome to join us.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Bennington.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Just a reminder for the members that the unveiling of the Art from the Heart piece that many of you joined in to put together on April 1st will be unveiled today in the card room. We're thinking around 3-ish, but it depends upon what is going on the floor. So it will happen when we have a little break in the action. So we hope you will come and enjoy the unveiling and see your beautiful artwork put together as a collage. Thank you so much.
Member from Wolcott. No? Member from Thetford.
Last Friday, when we read the resolution for Ed Hathaway and introduced his friends and family, I neglected a detail, not so much with regards to Ed Hathaway, but that other members here, I'm sure, are very interested in. And that is that when the EPA Superfund work was concluded and Ed had left the scene pretty much, a 5 megawatt solar array was constructed on top of what was TP3, the biggest, largest, and ugliest of the acid mining waste piles of stuff. So the 5 megawatt display in development was possible because, as one of his final gestures, Ed had the engineers who did all the work there grade the site 60 acres about, I think, 40 at least, to accommodate the solar display, which couldn't otherwise have happened. So even though Ed has passed away and his colleagues have left the scene, his legacy lives on, both in terms of the solar array just mentioned and also because the waters in the west branch of the Pomponic River are Madam Speaker, no longer bright orange. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Woodstock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to thank the member from Pownell for sharing with us his very poignant and personal loss. We all experience loss, some in this chamber, and from time to time we need to reflect on that. So I want to thank the member for sharing his personal story and how it impacts all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, orders of the day. Members, I'm going to just give you a brief update before we go into the action calendar. We will be going in order, starting with S69, S127. We will be doing all stages of passage on S123. We'll then move on to 479, and we will be calling up pending entry on the notice calendar for purpose of a committee of conference H91. So with that, we will begin with Senate Bill 69, which is an act relating to age-appropriate design code. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S69, an act relating to an age-appropriate design code.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 69 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our actions on S69 to the Senate forthwith.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend rules to message our action on Senate Bill 69 to the Senate forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to message our action on Senate Bill 69 to the Senate forthwith. Next is Senate Bill 127, which is an act relating to housing and housing development. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S127, an act relating to housing and housing development.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 127 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our action on S127 to the Senate forthwith.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 127 to the Senate forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to message our action on Senate Bill 127 to the Senate forthwith. Members, next is Senate Bill 123, which is an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws related to motor vehicles. The bill was referred to the Committee on Transportation, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Swanton, Representative Walker, will speak for the committee. In affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the bill pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Transportation. The member from Fairhaven, Representative Canfield, will speak for that committee. And then carrying an appropriation, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which also recommends that the bill pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Transportation. The member from Burke, Representative Kosenska, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S123, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws related to motor vehicles.
Member from Swanton.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I know that there's only one other place everybody'd like to be on a day like today, and that's waiting on the DMV line. So grab your ticket for the 44 sections that are coming your way. And if you want to follow along for S123, our miscellaneous motor vehicles law, it starts on page 3712 of today's calendar. If our House Committee, Speaker, if your House Committee on Transportation has done one thing this entire session is to make sure that everybody's aware of the financial situation related to the transportation dollars in this state, that we have stagnant and declining revenues and dramatically increasing construction costs and personnel costs. And that is the message I want to make sure that you leave. The Department of Motor Vehicles is the place where we collect and administer most of that activity. And these next 44 sections are updates and changes to that. The biggest issue going on in the Department of Motor Vehicle is in November will be the rollout of the third phase of the modernization IT project that we have committed almost $60 million to. So come November, licenses and many other the rest of the activities that you do at the DMV will be automated, which will be a tremendous help to everyone. The project continues to be on time and on budget, but that is the majority of the focus of the Department of Motor Vehicles between the time we leave here and the time we come back next January. This bill, the 44 sections that I mentioned, the largest portion of it is technical and procedural related to that update. A huge chunk of the bill is related to this massive change that we're making through the Modernization Act and resulting, and also as part of what we've done in review previously. There also has been a new legislative council brought on there, and they spent last summer going through updating and correcting and bringing into a more modern approach a lot of the language. So you'll hear a significant about that during the presentation. We did spend a significant amount of time and energy, and we are proposing for your approval and passing some significant changes in the flexibility around renewals and operators licenses. We are also committed very strongly as a committee to deal with the report findings that will come back from section 42 of the bill that you'll hear more about. There's several pieces to that everybody in the committee is anxious to hear about and look at those findings for next year. The last 2 to 3 weeks have been a significant amount of time on trails and legal trails related to class 4 roads and right-of-ways, and you're going to hear a significant amount more about that. So rather than wait in line any longer, I would like to yield to the member from Waitsfield.
The member from Swan yields to the member from Waitsfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So as the member from Swanton advised everyone, sit back, get comfortable for the next 44 sections of the DMV bill. And I will begin with sections 1 through 4. And again, you can follow this on page 3712 of today's calendar. Section 1 addresses electric vehicles and amends the definition of a pleasure car to include plug-in electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Section 2 addresses enhanced driver's licenses and clarifies that only applications for new enhanced driver's licenses require documents to prove identity and U.S. citizenship. Section 3 addresses non-driver identification cards, first by changing the reference his or her identification card to the individual's identification card, by changing the reference his or her valid Vermont license to the applicant's valid Vermont license, and lastly, adds language permitting an individual with a non-driver ID to elect to be an organ donor. The last section I'll share addresses special registration plates and placards for individuals with disabilities. First, by changing several references from he, his, or she, hers to the individual or the individuals, by changing a reference to the commissioner as him or her to back to simply the commissioner. And lastly, in this section, in reference to the placards issued to nonprofit organizations that provide volunteer drivers for individuals with disabilities, the phrase "placards shall be marked volunteer driver" has been removed, reflecting the Department of Motor Vehicles' long-standing practice of providing standard disabled placards to volunteer drivers. And I now yield to the member from Brattleboro.
The member from Waitsfield yields to the member from Brattleboro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be reporting on sections 5 through 13, starting on page 3716 of the House calendar. Section 5 waives the fee for a non-driver ID card for individuals under 23 who are transitioning out of foster care in Vermont. Section 6 waives the electric vehicle infrastructure fee for EVs owned by state, municipalities, and volunteer fire and rescue organizations. Section 7 waives the EV infrastructure fee and emissions fees for veterans who received a vehicle through financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. It extends the fee waiver to any qualifying veteran discharged under other than dishonorable conditions. Section 8 waives the operator's license and motorcycle endorsement fees for individuals under 23 who are transitioning out of foster care in Vermont. Section 9 waives learner's permit fees for individuals under 23 who are transitioning out of foster care in Vermont. Section 10 provides that commercial learner's permits shall include a photo of the holder. Section 11 prohibits deferred sentence for CDL permit holders who commit traffic violations. Section 12 permits a waiver of driver's test for holder of junior operator's license from another jurisdiction. And Section 13 provides that DMV shall start charging $29 scheduling fee for a road test on or before July 1st, 2026 to allow time for the rollout of the new system. And it permits a waiver of the fee if the appointment is canceled at least 48 hours in advance or for good cause. I shall now yield, too many waivers in there, to the member from Winooski.
The member from Brattleboro yields to the member from Winooski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be walking you through sections 14 through 20, which begin on page 3722 of today's calendar. Section 14 requires that operators' privilege cards bear the phrase non-real ID to conform with federal law. Privilege cards are a form of state-issued ID that does not meet the federal real ID requirements, and so this change was requested by the DMV. Sections 15 and 16 permit Vermonters to renew their operator's license, privilege card, or non-driver ID early, even if they are not within the 6 months leading up to the expiration of their ID. The fee for an ID that is renewed early would be prorated based on the number of years left on the original license. These two sections were in response to testimony on concerns about likely changes to federal real ID guidelines that could prevent trans and non-binary Vermonters from continuing to be able to self-attest to their gender markers on state-issued real IDs. These provisions would, in effect, allow people to restart the clock and secure their identification with their self-attested gender markers for up to 4 years. Section 17 states intent that individuals who do not want to or cannot provide the documentation necessary for a real ID be given information about how to acquire operators' privilege cards and non-driver IDs. Section 18 requires the DMV to develop a public outreach campaign to ensure Vermonters are aware of their ability to obtain a license or ID card, ability to self-attest to gender markers, and reduced fees available to certain individuals. Additionally, it requires the DMV to provide updates to the transportation committees regarding implementation and utilization of the license and ID early renewal provisions mentioned earlier in sections 15 and 16. Section 19 establishes experience requirements for both the commercial motor vehicle behind the wheel and theory instructors. This was a request from the DMV to align with federal guidelines for CDL instructors. And finally, Section 20 was developed in response to a need to broaden the pool of motorcycle instructors. It reduces the amount of licensed experience as a motorcycle operator that is required to in order to be a motorcycle instructor, and reduces that from 4 years down to 2 years. And this was another request from the DMV. And now I will yield to the member from Brownington to take you through the following sections.
The member from Winooski yields to the member from Brownington.
Madam Speaker, I am delighted to guide the House through the exciting sections of 21 to 26. Section 21, definitions. This replaces the NADA official used car guide with JD Power values for purposes of determining clean trade and value of a used car to reflect acquisition of NADA used car guide by JD Power. Taxable cost means the purchase price is defined in subdivision 4 of this section, or the taxable cost is determined under section 8907 of this title. Section 2, Commissioner, computation of taxable cost, replaces the NADA official used car guide with JD Power values for purposes of determining clean trade and value of used car to reflect acquisition of NADA used car guide by JD Power. That permits a commissioner to develop processes to determine value of vehicles not in JD Power values. Section 23, refunds, provides that requests for purchase and use tax refund must be submitted within 1 year of paying the tax. Any overpayment of such tax is terminated by or turned by the commissioner shall be refunded. Section 24, refund upon loss of vehicle, permits commissioner to accept proof other than a return registration or plates as proof that a vehicle's registration was canceled for the purpose of refunding registration fee for a destroyed vehicle. Section 25 amends credits and refunds, shortens the period in which to request a fuel tax refund from 33 months to 12 months. A user who purchases fuel within this state from a dealer upon which the user paid the tax at the time of purchase, or a user exempt from the payment of the tax under subsection 3003D of this title, who purchased fuel within the state upon which the user paid tax at the time of purchase, shall be entitled to a credit equal to the amount of the tax per gallon in effect when the fuel was purchased. Sections 26, alteration of odometers, clarifies that penalty for alteration of odometers applies to all offenses described in the section. No person shall sell, attempt to sell, or cause to be sold any motor vehicle, highway building appliance, motorboat, all-terrain vehicle, or snowmobile if that odometer, hubometer reading, or clock meter reading has been changed, tampered with, or defaced without disclosing that information to the buyer is illegal. Madam Speaker, I'll now yield to the capable representative from Shelburne. Thank you.
The member from Brownington yields to the member from Shelburne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm reporting on sections 27 through 33, beginning on page 3731 of today's calendar. Section 27 amends subsection 102, duties of the commissioner. It adds a cross-reference to definitions of conviction for clarity. Section 28 amends subsection 108, application forms, adding a cross-reference to definitions of conviction for clarity. Section 29 amends subsection 1709, report of convictions to Commissioner of DMV, adds a cross-section to definition of conviction for clarity. Section 30 amends subsection 1200, definitions, adds a cross-reference to definition of conviction for clarity. Section 31 amends subsection 1205, civil suspension, summary procedure, adds clarification throughout the section that drunken driving provisions apply to an individual operating at or above the legal limit. Section 32 amends subsection 1205D, updates notices of intent to suspend for drunken driving to provide that the notice does not serve as a temporary license. Section 3 amends subsection 367, trucks, updates weights for truck registration fees to reflect the department's fee schedule. I now yield to the member from Heinsberg.
The member from Shelburne yields to the member from Heinsberg.
Madam Speaker, I think we're going to make history today because I'm going to report on these sections 34 through 45 of the bill without using any transportation acronyms. There'll be no MBUF, no ATLE, no NEVI in my report. You can follow it on page 3737 for section, which starts section 34, which speaks to the purchase and use tax. This is a tax you pay based on the determined value of the vehicle, new or used, you wish to obtain a title for. These sections require the commissioner to formally define the procedures a taxpayer can take to appeal the defined tax liability. It will create education and outreach materials regarding those procedures. Section 36 is a technical correction. It adds section 1097 to 23 VSA to the grouping of violations which can result in 8 points against your license for speeds greater than 30 miles per hour above the speed limit. Section 37 deletes section 14, 15, and 16 of the 2024 Acts and Resolves 165. This repeals window tinting language, which was defined by the federal standard from last year's Miscellaneous Transportation Bill. It became apparent that our annual inspection stations and our police lack the necessary tools to enforce tinting to that new exacting standard. This does not eliminate the existing rules on excessive tinting of windows, which will still be a violation in 23 VSA. Section 38 only changes the definition of an all-terrain vehicle to allow for a wider maximum axle distance from 64 inches to 74. The wider axle distance is provided by all-terrain vehicle manufacturers to increase safety. It does not change any rules, restrictions, or where all-terrain vehicles are allowed to be operated. I didn't use an acronym for all-terrain vehicles, just noting that. Section 39 results from committee bills and testimony looking into the possibilities of making vehicle ownership more affordable for Vermonters. The Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, as noted earlier in the bill, will create a report that defines the process used to determine the value of pre-owned vehicles, which is used to determine the purchase and use tax liability. This report will provide data on when Vermonters use the option to obtain an appraisal value rather than the value from J.D. Power's Blue Book value. The report will include the number of appeals filed and the number approved, the vehicle types and the value difference between the two methods. Additionally, the report will include what assistance lower income owners presently can receive for safety and emission inspections and recommendations of any changes that might be considered to existing vehicle inspection processes, which might also make vehicle ownership more affordable. Sections 40 through 42 address changes to our bicycle rules. Section 40 permits bicycles to utilize pedestrian traffic walk signals to safely exit an intersection. While some municipalities already allow this, this safety rule will now be statewide. Section 41 explains the use of traffic control signals, which are specifically designed for bicycle traffic. These are traffic signals used at busy or challenging intersections that have a specific red, yellow, and green signal just for bicycles. There is only one of these signals presently in Vermont. This bill does not require or define where these signals might be used, but does codify how they will be used. Section 42 requires the Department of Motor Vehicle Commissioner, Department of Public Safety, along with stakeholders, to work together to develop education and outreach materials to educate Vermonters on new and existing rules and regulations around bicycle use. Section 34 adds intent language to the purpose and use of legal trails as defined in 19 VSA Chapter 3. Section 44 updates 19 VSA, specifically clarifying a municipality's authority to either maintain or choose not to maintain identified legal trail easements within their towns. Section 45 defines the effective dates of this bill. In Section 15 and 16, which allow early license and ID renewals, will be effective upon passage. All remaining sections are effective July 1st, 2025. This concludes my section of my transportation acronym-free report. I will now yield back to the representative from Swanton.
The member from Heinsberg yields to the member from Swanton.
And you can turn your ticket in 45 sections later. And Madam Speaker, we heard from more than 24 witnesses, including our normal JFO and Ledge Council and DMV and AOT, but also got to hear from the Vermont State Police and the ATV Sportsman's Club and the Vermont Queer Legal Professions, as well as Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Local Motion, Sierra Club, and many of your colleagues next to you today. So in a committee vote of 11-0, we asked for the body's support in passage of S-123.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Fairhaven.
Madam Speaker, your Committee on Ways and Means considered S-123, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws relating to motor vehicles. The fiscal note can be found on the Ways and Means webpage or the Joint Fiscal Office webpage by looking up S-123. This bill is estimated to reduce transportation fund revenues by $44,000 in fiscal year 2026. Your Ways and Means Committee heard from the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, the Vice Chair of the House Committee on Transportation, Legislative Counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, a fiscal analyst from the Joint Fiscal Office. Your Committee on Ways and Means voted favorable 9-0-2 and recommends this bill ought to pass.
And now for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Burke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Committee on Appropriations reviewed the report from Transportation regarding changes in Vermont's motor vehicle statutes and revenue. Testimony was received from Legislative Counsel regarding the changes, including a review of the fiscal note as presented by the Joint Fiscal Office. With a vote of 11-0-0, the Committee on Appropriations recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Transportation.
And now the member from Burlington, Representative Hedrick, and others offer an amendment to the report of the Committee on Transportation that begins on page 3746 of today's calendar. Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, my name is Troy Hedrick, and I use he and him pronouns. When I introduce myself in that fashion to others, people are never surprised by my pronouns. They never really even blink. When I need to hand someone my ID who has asked for it, I never get that double take that non-verbally questions my information or asks me to prove my gender markers. When I prepare for travel, whether that be across the country or simply across the border for a day in Montreal, I never have to navigate the fear or the anxiety about who might delay my freedom to do so because they question how my ID compares to how I present. My self-identification, how I see myself, matches the construct we have created for what it means to identify as male. Nobody questions it because I conform. I hold a peace of mind that is currently threatened by federal overreach for our trans, non-binary, and genderqueer friends and neighbors. And let me state that clearly, let me explain that. Gender is most certainly a construct. We have constructed a system of social norms, roles, and expectations that dictate how a person's outward appearance should match how we believe their gender ought to be, what we believe their gender ought to be, how they look, how they act, and how they simply move through the world. And we constructed those norms with incredibly narrow and rigid parameters. And we are learning how those rigid parameters are overly confining and that they disregard large numbers of Vermonters while forcing them to conform with identity expectations that do not fit with their lived realities. Vermont has led the way by allowing self-attestation of gender for our IDs, which is critical for trans and non-binary Vermonters. But federal real ID compliance is not based solely on state policy. It also requires documentation like birth certificates or passports that fall under federal standards. Trump's recent executive order directs federal agencies to define sex based on biology at conception. That puts trans and non-binary Vermonters at risk when traveling, when interacting with federal agencies such as the TSA, or renewing identification. This amendment gives people stability and would lock in their affirmed identity for 8 years so they're not forced to reassert or justify who they are under a hostile federal framework. When this pairs with the early renewal option also found within the underlying bill, we allow Vermonters to start that clock upon passage of the bill and hopefully outlast these new restrictions. I've been asked a number of times why a 4-year window isn't already enough to outlast current federal climate. And I think this is a dangerous underestimation of just how much the voting requirements are likely to change in the next few years, and a dangerous underestimation of how quickly personal rights can erode. It is an equally dangerous overconfidence in our ability to overcome the corruption we are likely to see, and an overestimation of how prepared we are to stop it. On the fiscal concerns for this amendment that have been discussed within the committee, this amendment is revenue neutral. It sets the 8-year fee at 4 times the 2-year rate. It adjusts the 8-year enhanced ID fee proportional to be twice the 4-year rate. And to prevent a revenue cliff, it sets aside half of each 8-year fee into a reserve fund for use midway through the revenue cycle. That apparently is the sticking point. Some remain fixated on the worry that a future legislature or administration might misuse that reserve. If that truly is the concern, then we should fix our reserve policies, not withhold this protection. We should not deny marginalized Vermonters dignity because we don't trust ourselves to govern responsibly. That concern is separate from the conversation about whether or not an 8-year renewal option for our IDs is warranted to protect some of our more marginalized friends and neighbors within the current context of federal overreach. It is unfortunate that we cannot seem to make that separation. Madam Speaker, before I close, I want to acknowledge what this moment represents. When we have the opportunity to strengthen our laws, especially in revenue neutral ways, and to recognize how policy impacts on our communities different and disparate ways, we have an obligation to act, and this was one of those moments. We say that equity is at the core of our policy work. If that's true, then we have to meet that commitment, not just in our words, but in our votes, our amendments, and our willingness to protect those most at risk. And I feel today we've missed that opportunity. Nonetheless, and with deep reluctance, I will ask for leave of the House to withdraw this amendment unless there is a voiced objection.
Absent objection, leave is granted. Now the member from Wolcott, Representative Noyes, offers an amendment to the report of the Committee on Transportation that begins on page 3749 of today's calendar. Member from Wolcott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The amendment I offered, as we just heard, is on page 3749 of today's calendar. It does not reduce the requirement that vehicles on Vermont's roads must be safe. It does not eliminate emission standards. It does not do away with the inspection process. And it does not reduce revenue to the state. What this amendment does is simple. It proposes that vehicle inspections move to every other year schedule rather than annually, At the same time, it increases inspection sticker fees collected by the state from $8 to $16, maintaining revenue neutrality. Right now, Vermont is one of 9 states that still require annual vehicle inspections. 3 states require them every other year, and a majority of the states do not require them at all. Like many Vermonters, I've owned my share of unreliable, rusty vehicles, plenty of Saabs, some hand-me-downs, others I bought used. I spent many cold winter mornings trying to get them started, and more than a few afternoons doing a brake job or an oil change in the driveway. Fingers freezing just to save a few bucks and to keep them running enough to get to work. That experience isn't unique. It's a reality for many working Vermonters, especially in rural areas of our state, where no fixed transportation. Vehicle safety inspections began in Vermont in 1935. But in perspective, cars manufacturers didn't even begin offering seatbelts as an option until 1950, and weren't mandated in U.S. vehicles until 1965. Since then, we've seen a rise of airbags, anti-lock brakes, automatic braking systems, and vehicles that contain miles of wiring, sensors, and multiple computer systems. Today's vehicles are vastly more safe, advanced, and reliable, but also more expensive to own and maintain. That's why I propose this amendment, to offer a modest, meaningful way to reduce the cost of car ownership for everyday Vermonters without compromising safety or emission standards. As we consider this issue, I believe we must ask ourselves, is the goal of our inspection safety? Is it to generate state revenue? Or is it an economic motive to drive business to repair shops, many that are small local businesses? What will the report due to this body on July 1st say about moving to a mileage-based user fee? We also have to ask, are annual inspections still necessary, or have they become a burden, both financially and logistically, for Vermonters who rely on cars every day? Over the years, I've introduced several bills seeking to change Vermont's vehicle inspections, but none have moved forward. However, I recently had a productive conversation with members of the House Transportation Committee and have been encouraged by their commitment to take this issue up in the second half of the biennium, hopefully with the goal of creating a system that is fair, equitable, and less burdensome on the people we serve. With that in mind, and with the belief that more thorough committee-led work will lead to better policy, I respectfully ask for leave of the House to withdraw this amendment. Thank you.
Absent objection, leave is granted. Now the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Transportation? Are you ready for the question? If so, a member from West Windsor.
Madam Speaker, may I please inquire of the original presenter of the bill?
The member from Swanton is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, I just have a question about the real ID portion of the bill. Since we have a motor voter law in effect in our state, I wondered whether you took any testimony on whether that law will be updated with the real ID. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, did I understand you saying motorboat law? Make sure that I clarify that I heard which.
The automatic, I'm referring to the automatic voter registration, which currently occurs with both regular driver's license creation and also real state or state IDs. And I wondered when you were talking about the real ID, whether that negates, whether you're updating the motor voter or automatic voter registration, and what will become of people who are already on the books but do not have registered real IDs. Does that make sense?
I think so. We did not update, or there is not a process in this that is going to update the voter motor ID.
Madam Speaker, does that mean that since we already have automatic registration on our IDs, that those will continue even though the real ID requirement has now come into effect?
The process that's in place today will continue unless it's impacted by the updated modernization in November, but that intends that it will all continue the way that it is today. So if you're getting a real ID renewal process today, that will continue.
But Madam Speaker, what I'm asking about is IDs that are not real IDs. Will voter registration continue with IDs that are not qualified as real IDs?
We did not pursue the area related to registration, related to voter registration with the Secretary of State's portion of that piece. So we did not dig into that. So I could not, nothing will change from the way that it is today based on this law.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Transportation? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to place Senate Bill 123 in all remaining stages of passage?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to place S123 in all remaining stages of passage.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend our rules to place Senate Bill 123 in all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to place Senate Bill 123 in all remaining stages of passage. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S123, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to laws related to motor vehicles.
The question is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 123 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our actions on S123 to the Senate forthwith.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 123 to the Senate forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to message our action on Senate Bill 123 to the Senate forthwith. Now we'll turn to House Bill 479, which is an act related to housing. Member from Silas.
Madam Speaker, I move that we postpone action on H479 until this Friday, the 30th.
The member from Silas moves that we postpone action on House Bill 479 until Friday, May 30th. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have postponed action on House Bill 479 until this Friday. Members, the Senate has messaged to us a Senate proposal of amendment to House Bill 91, which is an act relating to the Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance and Responsive Transition to Housing Program. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to take up House Bill 91 for immediate consideration, pending its entry on the notice calendar for the purpose of requesting a committee of conference?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to take up H91 for immediate consideration, pending entry on the notice calendar for the purposes of a committee of conference.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend rules to take up House Bill 91 for immediate consideration, pending its entry on the notice calendar. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to take up House Bill 91 for immediate consideration. House Bill 91 is an act relating to the Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance and Responsive Transition to Housing Program. The bill passed the Senate with a proposal of amendment that is posted on the House Overview webpage and has been emailed to you this morning. Member from Waterbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your House Human Services Committee reviewed the amendments being proposed by the Senate, and while we appreciate their work, we found some significant differences, and by a vote of 11-0-0, we voted to not concur and to request a conference committee.
The member from Waterbury moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate proposal of amendment and request a committee of conference. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have refused to concur in the Senate proposal of amendment and requested a committee of conference. Pursuant to your action, the chair appoints the following members to serve on the part of the House: the member from Waterbury, Representative Wood; the member from Rutland City, Representative McGuire; and the member from Bridport, Representative McGill. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to message our action on House Bill 91 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our actions on H91 to the Senate forthwith.
The member from Poultney moves that we suspend rules to message our action on House Bill 91 to the Senate forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended rules to message our action on House Bill 91 to the Senate forthwith. Members, at this time, we are going to recess for caucuses and to allow some committees to take further testimony on bills that have come back from the Senate. So Republicans will be caucusing immediately following the floor in room 10, the Democrats as well in room 11, and the Progressives as well in room 44. With that, the House will stand in recess until the fall of the gavel at 3 p.m.